"I'd like to make a toast," Josh announced, raising his glass as everyone at his housewarming party turned to look at him. His eyes gleamed with excitement, an expression I'd seen countless times when he was about to steal the spotlight to new beginnings, new homes, and he paused dramatically to Grandpa's memory. A respectful silence fell over the room. Our grandfather had passed away just 4 days ago, and the wound was still fresh for all of us. I raised my glass along with everyone else, quietly honoring the man who had meant so much to me. Speaking of Grandpa, Josh continued, setting his drink down on the coffee table. "I have an announcement to make." I watched as he reached into his pocket and pulled out an envelope slightly worn at the edges. My heart skipped a beat. There was something about the way he glanced at me that made me uneasy. "Before he died, Grandpa gave me this letter," Josh said, his voice carrying across the living room of his new Denver home. "He wanted me to have his vacation home by the lake, the place we all loved as kids." The room erupted in surprised murmurs and congratulations. My parents beamed with pride, while Josh's girlfriend Teresa clapped excitedly. My cousin Jenna shot me a confused look from across the room. She knew how close Grandpa and I had been. I sat stunned, unable to process what I was hearing. The lakeside cabin was Grandpa's most cherished possession. It was also the place where I had spent nearly every weekend for the past 3 years, helping him maintain the property, listening to his stories, and simply enjoying his company. Josh, on the other hand, had visited maybe twice in the last 5 years, always complaining about the lack of Wi-Fi and nothing to do. But more importantly, Grandpa had given me a small wooden box 3 weeks ago, making me promise not to open it until the time was right. Inside was a notarized deed transferring ownership of the vacation home to me. He had already given me the property. It wasn't even part of his estate. As Josh unfolded the letter and began to read what were supposedly Grandpa's wishes, I studied his face. Was he lying? Did he know about the deed? Had Grandpa somehow changed his mind without telling me? "That's great, good for you, Josh," I managed to say with a forced smile, though my mind was racing. I needed to get home and check the documents in that wooden box. Right away, I quietly excused myself, saying I needed to use the bathroom, and slipped away from the celebration. As I closed the bathroom door behind me, I leaned against it and took a deep breath. The letter Josh had shown everyone didn't make sense. Grandpa's handwriting had become increasingly shaky in his final months due to arthritis, but the signature I glimpsed looked suspiciously smooth and confident. My phone buzzed with a text from Jenna. "You okay?" That was weird. Josh never even cared about the cabin. I texted Jenna back, "Need to check something at home. Can you cover for me?" Say I got called into work. Within minutes she had made my excuses to the family, and I slipped out the back door. While everyone was still fawning over Jay's inheritance, the drive to my apartment felt surreal. Street lights blurred as memories of Grandpa flooded my mind, teaching me to fish off the dock, pointing out constellations in the clear mountain sky, laughing at my terrible attempts to skip stones across the lake. The vacation home wasn't just property. It was where our most precious memories lived. It was our special place where Grandpa had taught me about resilience, patience, and finding joy in simple things. Josh had never shown any interest in those lessons or the cabin itself. His announcement felt like a violation of something sacred. As soon as I got home, I went straight to my closet and retrieved the wooden box Grandpa had given me. It was his old cigar box, worn smooth with age, the cedar still fragrant when opened. "Don't open this until you need to know the truth," he told me, his eyes crinkling with that familiar wisdom that suggested he knew more than he was saying. My hands trembled as I lifted the lid. Inside lay several neatly folded documents, a sealed envelope with my name written on it, and a small brass key I recognized immediately. It opened the antique roll-top desk in Grandpa's study at the cabin. I unfolded the top document and gasped. It was exactly as I remembered, a notarized deed transferring ownership of the vacation home to me, dated 6 months ago. Alongside it was a letter in Grandpa's unmistakably shaky handwriting. "My dearest Jules," it began, "by the time you read this, I'll likely be gone. I've decided to give you the cabin while I'm still alive to avoid any complications. You're the only one who truly loved this place as much as I did. Your brother never showed interest, except when he needed a place to host parties. When I wasn't around, tears blurred my vision. As I continued reading, I know your brother might contest this, which is why I've had everything Properly notarized and filed. There's a copy with my lawyer, Harold Thompson. The cabin is legally yours already. This isn't part of my will or estate. I trust you to honor the spirit of our special place." I sat back stunned. Josh had lied. He fabricated a letter knowing full well Grandpa had already given the property to me. The audacity was breathtaking even for him. My phone buzzed with messages from my parents asking where I'd gone. Josh had texted, "To nice disappearing act. Don't worry, you can still visit the cabin if you ask nicely." That's when I knew what I had to do. I wouldn't confront him via text or phone. No, this called for something more direct. I gathered the documents, tucked them back into the box, and checked the time. The party would still be going for a couple more hours. I wiped my tears, took a deep breath, and headed back to my car. It was time for the truth to come out. The drive back to Josh's house gave me time to think. I wasn't going to cause a scene. That wasn't my style, and certainly not what Grandpa would have wanted. He'd always told me, when you have truth on your side, Jess, you don't need to shout it from the rooftops. The quiet truth hits harder than any loud lie. I parked a block away from Josh's house, the wooden box secure on the passenger seat beside me. For a moment, I just sat there gathering my courage. I thought about all the weekends I'd spent with Grandpa at the cabin. While Josh was too busy to visit, I remembered how Grandpa's face would light up when I arrived, how we'd spend hours talking about everything and nothing on the porch swing. "What would you do, Grandpa?" I whispered, running my fingers over the box's smooth surface. The answer came almost immediately in my mind, the right thing. With grace, I decided not to go back into the party right away. Instead, I texted Jenna. "How many people are still there?" She replied quickly, "Just family now. Most guests left after dinner." "You coming back?" This was perfect. I didn't want a crowd. For what I needed to do, I took the box and walked the short distance to Josh's front door. When I knocked, it was Josh himself who answered, his expression shifting from surprise to weariness. "Work emergency over already?" he asked, his tone suggesting he didn't believe there had been one in the first place. "We need to talk, Josh," I said calmly, stepping past him into the house. Everyone looked up as I entered the living room. My father was examining what must have been Josh's letter more closely, while my mother was already discussing renovation plans for the cabin with Teresa. Jenna sat quietly in the corner, watching the scene with obvious discomfort. "Jules is back," my mother announced unnecessarily. "We were just discussing Josh's wonderful news about the cabin." "Actually," I said, setting the wooden box down on the coffee table, "that's what I wanted to talk about." Josh's eyes locked onto the box, recognition flickering across his face. "What's that?" he asked, though I could tell from his expression that he had a good idea. "Something Grandpa gave me 3 weeks ago." I explained, keeping my voice level. "He asked me not to open it until the time was right." I looked directly at Josh. "I think that time is now." Before Josh could protest, my father leaned forward with interest. "What is it, Jules?" I opened the box and carefully removed the notarized deed and Grandpa's letter. 6 months ago, Grandpa legally transferred ownership of the vacation home to me," I said, laying the documents on the table for everyone to see. "It's already mine. It's not part of his estate, or will." The room fell silent. My mother's mouth dropped open while my father picked up the deed with a furrowed brow. Josh stood frozen, his face draining of color. "This is notarized," my father confirmed, examining the document. "And this is definitely your grandfather's signature." "That's impossible," Josh finally sputtered. "Grandpa gave me the letter. He wanted me to have the cabin." "May I see that letter again?" I asked, extending my hand toward my father. He handed it over, and I placed it side by side with Grandpa's handwritten letter from my box. The difference was stark and obvious. The handwriting on Josh's letter was an attempt at imitation, but it lacked the telltale shakiness caused by Grandpa's arthritis. The signature was too perfect to control. "Josh," my mother said slowly, her voice barely above a whisper, "did you forge this letter?" His silence was answer enough. Josh's silence stretched uncomfortably before he finally broke it, his voice a mixture of defiance and desperation. "You don't understand. It's not fair that she gets everything." "Everything?" I echoed, genuinely confused. "What are you talking about? You were always Grandpa's favorite," Josh said, his words rushing out like water through a broken dam. "Always visiting him, always helping him, always the perfect grandchild. The rest of us barely got a look in." My father cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable with the direction the conversation had taken. "Josh, regardless of how you feel, forging your grandfather's signature is serious." "Let me see those," my mother interjected, reaching for both letters. She compared them side by side, her express, supportive nod. She had always seen through Josh's antics, even when our parents couldn't. "I don't understand," my father said, finally turning to Josh. "Why would you announce something like this without even checking if it was true?" The will reading. "Isn't until next week." Josh's face flushed with anger and embarrassment. "I found out about the deed." He admitted, "I was at Grandpa's lawyer's office last week asking about the estate, and Thompson mentioned that the cabin wasn't part of it because it had already been taken care of. He wouldn't tell me more because of client confidentiality. But I knew what it meant. I thought if I announced it first, maybe what my mother pressed, maybe Jules would just let you have it. Maybe everyone would believe me instead of her for once." Josh snapped, his voice rising. "Maybe I could have something that mattered to Grandpa." His words hung in the air, revealing a jealousy deeper than I had realized. I felt a twinge of sympathy. Despite everything, had he really felt that excluded from Grandpa's life? "Josh," I said quietly, "Grandpa invited you to the cabin countless times. You always said you were too busy." "Because I felt like an intruder," he shot back. "By the time I realized what I was missing, it was too late. You'd had your special bond, your inside jokes, your traditions. There was no room for me." My father shook his head, disappointment evident in his expression. "That doesn't justify lying to the entire family." "Son," Josh slumped into a chair, the fight seemingly draining out of him. "So what happens now?" he asked, not looking at any of us. "You've made your point, Jules. You win. This isn't about winning," I said, thinking of Grandpa and what he would want in this moment. Despite Josh's deception, he was still my brother, and Grandpa had loved him too in his own way. I reached back into the wooden box and pulled out something I hadn't mentioned yet. A sealed envelope with Josh's name on it, written in Grandpa's distinctive handwriting. "He left something for you, too," I said, holding it out to my brother. Josh looked up, suspicion and hope wearing in his expression. "What is it?" "I don't know," I admitted honestly. "Grandpa told me not to open anything that wasn't addressed to me." After a moment's hesitation, Josh took the envelope and carefully opened it. As he read the contents, his expression shifted from defensive to shocked, and finally to something that looked like genuine remorse. "He knew," Josh said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "He knew I might try to claim the cabin." My mother moved to sit beside him. "What does it say, honey?" Josh hesitated, then handed her the letter. "Read it," he said. "Everyone should hear it." My mother adjusted her reading glasses and began, "Dear Josh, if you're reading this, then Jules has opened my cedar box, which means one of two things. Either I'm gone or something has happened that made her feel it was necessary to reveal its contents. I've known you since the day you were born, and I know your heart. You've always wanted recognition and validation, things I perhaps failed to give you in the way you needed. But I also know when you feel overlooked, you sometimes make impulsive decisions that hurt others and ultimately yourself. The cabin has been transferred to Jules. This was a decision I made with great thought and love, not because I didn't care for you, but because Jules connected with the place in a way you never did. She understood what made it special to me, and I trust her to preserve that spirit. What you need isn't a property, Josh, it's a purpose. I've enclosed a check for $25. Use it to start something meaningful. Find what makes your heart come alive the way the cabin does for Jules. Maybe it's that business idea you mentioned last Christmas, or perhaps something else entirely. I hope someday you'll understand that this isn't about favorites or fairness. It's about recognizing different paths for different hearts. Jules will keep the door open for you at the cabin, I have no doubt. But your future lies in building something of your own with love and hope. Grandpa. When my mother finished reading, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. Josh sat with his head bowed, the check clutched in his trembling hand. "He saw right through me," he murmured, "even from the grave." My father moved to place a comforting hand on Josh's shoulder. "Your grandfather was a perceptive man." Josh looked up at me, really looked at me, perhaps for the first time in years. "I'm sorry, Jules. I had no right to try and take what was already yours." The words seemed to cost him, but they also sounded sincere. I nodded, not quite ready to offer forgiveness, but acknowledging his apology. "There's something else in the box," I said, reaching for it again. I pulled out a small photo album and opened it to reveal pictures spanning years. Josh and me as children at the cabin, building sandcastles by the lake, roasting marshmallows with Grandpa at the fire pit. He kept this in his desk at the cabin, I explained, turning pages to show more recent photos. "He never stopped hoping you'd come around." Josh, my brother, stared at the photos, emotion Washing over his face, I really messed up, didn't I? Yes, I agreed, not sugarcoating it, but Grandpa obviously thought you could do better. The room fell silent again, but it was a different kind of silence, contemplative. Rather than tense, sad, rather than angry, the evening had taken a turn none of us had expected, laying barriers of complicated feelings and unspoken resentments. Jenna, who had been watching silently, finally spoke up. So what happens now? If was the question hanging in the air for all of us. What do you do after a moment of painful truth? How do you move forward from betrayal and revelation? I closed the wooden box, feeling the weight of responsibility Grandpa had placed on me, not just for the cabin, but perhaps for healing our family. To now, I said quietly, we try to honor what Grandpa wanted for both of us. The gathering broke up soon after my parents left, with concerned glances back at Josh, clearly torn between disappointment in his actions and worry for his well-being. Jenna gave me a quick hug before heading out, whispering, "Call me tomorrow." And then it was just Josh and me in his new house. The celebratory atmosphere completely evaporated. Josh moved around his kitchen, mechanically making coffee. Neither of us really wanted the silence between us, felt heavy with all the years of competition and misunderstanding. I didn't plan it, he said, finally setting a mug in front of me. The forgery, I mean, when I found out about the deed, I was angry, hurt. I made the letter that same night, not really thinking I'd use it then. Why did you? I asked, wrapping my hands around the warm mug. Josh stared into his coffee, as if it might hold answers. When everyone was here tonight celebrating my new house, I wanted more, something bigger to announce. It just came out. He looked up, his expression vulnerable in a way I rarely saw. I've always been jealous of what you had with Grandpa. You could have had it too, I pointed out, not unkindly. He wanted that. I know that now, Josh admitted, but I was too proud, too stubborn to see it. Then he hesitated, then asked, "What are you going to do with the cabin?" It was the question I'd been asking myself since Grandpa had given me the deed 6 months ago. Keep it as it is mostly. It needs some repairs, but I don't want to change its character. Josh nodded, looking relieved. That's good. It should stay the way Grandpa loved it. I studied my brother, this person I'd grown up with, but sometimes felt I barely knew. You're welcome there, you know, anytime. His eyes widened slightly in surprise. Even after what I did, the cabin was meant to bring family together, not drive us apart, I said, echoing what I believed Grandpa would have wanted. That doesn't mean I'm not still angry, or that I trust you completely right now, but the door is open. Josh seemed to understand the qualified olive branch for what it was. Thank you. We sat in silence for a few more minutes, sipping coffee that had already gone cold. The night had been exhausting emotionally and physically, and there was still much to process. I should go, I said finally. You're just not cut out for this job, Karen said, leaning back in her leather chair, a hint of satisfaction in her eyes. The West Ridge Hotel project needs someone with stronger leadership skills. I maintained my composure despite the familiar sting of her words. Through the glass walls of her office, I could see our colleagues glancing curiously in our direction. The same Westridge Hotel project where my redesign saved us $300,000, I asked quietly. Karen waved her hand dismissively. My redesign, I presented it to the board after I created it. That's your job, Sophia, to support me, she sighed theatrically. Look, this isn't working anymore. I need someone who understands their place in the hierarchy. I nodded slowly, a strange calm washing over me. I understand perfectly. I'll leave on Friday, but Monday will be interesting. Karen rolled her eyes, always with the cryptic comments. This is exactly what I'm talking about. I'm Sophia Vasquez, 49 years old, Senior Project Coordinator at Reynolds Architecture and Design. For 8 years, I've crafted innovative solutions for our clients' most challenging projects. My passion is creating spaces that blend beauty with functionality, but more importantly, staying within budget while exceeding expectations. What stands in my way? Karen Mitchell, 41, my direct supervisor and the firm's youngest partner. She's mastered the art of harvesting others' ideas, particularly mine, and presenting them as her own. Her quick rise through the ranks was built on stolen concepts and misappropriated credit. And now she wants me gone. After years of taking credit for my work, she's decided I'm expendable. Perhaps I've become too vocal about recognition. Perhaps she senses that others are starting to notice the pattern. Whatever her reasons, she's made her move. As I walked back to my desk, I passed the wall of project photos in the main hallway. The Westridge Hotel, the Pinnerest Community Center, the Lakeview Towers. All projects I'd poured my heart into, all bearing plaques with Karen's name as lead designer. My phone buzzed with a text from David, one of our senior architects. "How'd the meeting go?" Karen looked smug. As expected, I replied, "She's pushing me out. That's insane. Your coastal restoration project just won an award." Her coastal restoration project. According to the press release, I settled at my desk, unlocking my drawer to retrieve the external hard drive, containing copies of all my original designs, email chains, and documentation. Insurance I'd begun collecting months ago when Karen's behavior shifted from merely taking credit to actively minimizing my contributions. My desk phone rang, our receptionist's extension. "Sophia, there's someone from Archer and Hayes in the lobby asking for you. Says it's about the consultation you did for them." I froze. I'd never done any work for Archer and Hayes, our biggest competitor. "I'll be right down." As I rode the elevator, a sinking feeling settled in my stomach. This wasn't just about Karen taking credit anymore. Something else was happening, something worse than I'd realized. I've spent 27 years in architecture and design, starting as a drafting assistant in New York. I worked my way through increasingly complex projects while raising my daughter as a single mother. My portfolio expanded from residential renovations to commercial complexes, to the sustainable public spaces that became my specialty. 8 years ago, Reynolds Architecture and Design recruited me from a smaller firm in Philadelphia. The promise, a leadership position, creative freedom, and the resources to pursue innovative, sustainable design. For the first 4 years under our previous creative director, I thrived. My coastal restoration project, a series of community spaces built with reclaimed materials that could withstand severe weather. Events became the firm's calling card. Then Karen arrived. Originally hired as a project manager, she quickly aligned herself with our aging founder, Harold Reynolds. Her approach was calculated, lavish compliments, strategic lunches, weekend invitations to her Catskills cabin. Within 18 months, she'd secured a partnership, the youngest in the firm's history. Initially, I admired Karen's ambition. Her presentations were polished, her client interactions smooth. She seemed genuinely enthusiastic about my designs, often stopping by my desk to discuss concepts. I interpreted her interest as mentorship, perhaps even friendship. The warning signs appeared gradually. First came the collaborative presentations where my contributions went unmentioned. Then projects I'd initiated were suddenly reassigned, with Karen overseeing them directly. In meetings, she began interrupting me or rephrasing my ideas as her own. "Sophia had an interesting starting point," she would say, "but I refined it into something more practical." Harold, nearing retirement and increasingly disengaged, seemed charmed by Karen's confidence. Other partners, mostly men over 60, responded similarly to her carefully cultivated image of competence combined with just enough difference to their experience. My colleagues noticed the pattern. David from the architectural team once whispered, "Did she seriously just present your riverfront concept as her breakthrough idea?" Our receptionist, Jenna, started marking my original designs with timestamps before filing them, giving me silent nods of support. I persevered, believing my work would eventually speak for itself. When we won the Regional Design Excellence Award for the Coastal Project, I anticipated acknowledgement. Instead, Karen accepted the award alone, her speech excluding any mention of my contribution. That night, I began backing up my work, saving emails, documenting my design process with dated entries. Not for confrontation. I still hoped things would improve naturally, but for peace of mind. Looking back, I was naive. Karen wasn't just an opportunist. She was systematic in her approach. Each appropriated design, each stolen concept was a deliberate step in her career advancement, and I had unintentionally become both her greatest resource and her largest threat. Our relationship had settled into an uneasy pattern, her taking credit, me producing more work, increasingly resentful but conflict-averse. Until yesterday, when she requested my complete portfolio files for archival purposes. Something about her expression, a mixture of entitlement and calculation, finally triggered my suspicions. In the lobby, a well-dressed man in his 50s extended his hand. "Ms. Vasquez, James Donovan from Archer and Hayes. Thank you for meeting with me. There must be some misunderstanding," I said carefully. "I've never consulted for your firm." His brow furrowed. "That's strange. We have preliminary designs for our Portland waterfront project that were attributed to you, Karen. Mitchell shared them. Last month, said you'd provided consultation." My stomach dropped. The Portland waterfront, a $50 million revitalization project that would transform the city's harbor district. I'd sketched concepts for it after hours, purely as a creative exercise, never intending to share them officially. "May I see these designs?" I asked, fighting to keep my voice steady. He pulled out his tablet, displaying familiar renderings, my renderings, but with subtle modifications. The core concept was unmistakably mine: elevated green spaces connecting, historical buildings with flexible areas that could be reconfigured during flood seasons. "These were presented as collaborative work between your firm and ours," James explained. "We were quite impressed. In fact, we've incorporated several elements into our final proposal." The room seemed to tilt slightly. Karen hadn't just taken credit for my work within our firm. She'd been selling my concepts to our competitors. "Who else has seen these designs?" I asked. "Our entire executive team. And we've already presented to the Portland Development Commission." They were quite excited. He paused, studying my expression. "Is there a problem? I need to check something with my office. Would you excuse me for a moment? In the restroom?" I leaned against the wall, processing this revelation. Karen had taken my personal sketches, likely from my computer, when I stepped away, and positioned them as collaborative work with a competing firm. The ethical violation was staggering. More disturbing was the realization that this explained her sudden push to terminate me. If these designs were moving forward with Portland officials, she needed me gone before I discovered the theft. My phone buzzed with a meeting notification. "All staff, special announcement, 3:00 p.m. today." When I returned to my desk, activity around the office had intensified. People were talking in hushed groups, giving me concerned glances. David stopped by, lowering his voice. "Harold is flying in for the meeting. Something about a transformative partnership with Archer and Hayes?" I guessed. His eyes widened. "How did you know?" "James Donovan is downstairs with my designs for the Portland waterfront." "Your designs?" David looked confused. "Karen's been working on Portland for months. It's what's getting her promoted to creative director." The final piece clicked into place. Karen wasn't just pushing me out. She was stepping into a role created specifically for her visionary work on Portland, work she had stolen from me. I opened my email to find a message from HR detailing my transition package. They weren't even waiting until Friday. Karen had accelerated my departure to today. My hand hovered over the external hard drive in my drawer. It contained everything. Original files with metadata proving my authorship, emails, documentation of my design process. Enough evidence to expose Karen's systematic theft. But would anyone believe me? Karen had spent years cultivating relationships with leadership while systematically isolating me. It would be her word against mine, and she'd already positioned me as underperforming and resentful. I closed the drawer without taking the drive. I needed time to think, to plan my next steps carefully. This wasn't just about credit anymore. It was about professional ethics, potentially legal issues, and my entire career. The conference room filled quickly. For the 3 p.m. meeting, I chose a seat near the back, ignoring the whispers and glances. Karen stood at the front beside Harold Reynolds, looking triumphant in a tailored navy suit, the one she reserved for important presentations. Harold cleared his throat. "Today marks an exciting new chapter for Reynolds Architecture and Design. We're announcing a strategic partnership with Archer and Hayes for the Portland waterfront revitalization." On the screen behind him appeared the ones James Donovan had shown me earlier, now branded with both companies' logos. This collaboration, spearheaded by Karen Mitchell, represents the innovative thinking that drives our firm forward, Harold continued. Karen's vision for Portland has already impressed city officials and secured preliminary app. Gesturing us both into his office, for 20 minutes, I listened as Karen systematically undermined me. She presented doctored timelines, suggesting I'd claimed credit for collaborative work. She referenced performance issues that had never appeared in my reviews. Worst of all, she implied I'd accessed her computer and copied her Portland concepts. That's completely untrue. I finally interrupted. I have proof that Sophia, Harold said. This isn't productive. Karen has documented her concerns thoroughly. Given these issues and the restructuring around our new partnership, we think it's best to accelerate your departure. You're terminating me today without investigating her claims? Karen produced a folder, your separation agreement, standard terms, 2-month severance. We'll need you to clear out your desk by the end of the day. I stared at the document, rage and disbelief wearing within me. And if I dispute this? Harold's expression hardened. We have documentation of performance issues going back months. Fighting this would only damage your professional reputation. We both knew what he meant. Karen had been building a case against me, manipulating records to create a narrative of incompetence. Even with my evidence, a legal battle would be messy, public, and potentially career-ending. I understand, I said quietly, taking the folder. Karen smiled sympathetically. I'll help communicate this transition to the team. As I left Harold's office, my phone buzzed with an email notification. Subject: Portland Waterfront Project Confidential, from an address I didn't recognize. I opened it to find detailed information about the Portland project's upcoming phases, timelines, budgets, stakeholder information, along with a message: you should see this. Not write what they're doing to you, a friend. For a moment, I considered forwarding it to Harold as proof of my involvement. Then I realized this wasn't help. It was a trap. If I shared confidential project information, especially after being terminated, Karen could accuse me of corporate espionage. I cleared my desk methodically, packing personal items under the watchful eye of an HR representative. The external hard drive with my evidence went into my bag first. Family photos, design awards, and the small succulent plant my daughter had given me followed. 8 years reduced to a single cardboard box. I'm sorry it ended this way, Jenna whispered as she hugged me goodbye at reception. We all know what really happened. Thank you, I said, touched by her support. Take care of yourself. Outside, I hailed a cab, giving the driver my address before sinking into the back seat. Only then did I allow myself to acknowledge the magnitude of what had happened. My career at Reynolds was over, my reputation potentially damaged, 8 years of work appropriated by someone else. My phone buzzed with texts from concerned colleagues. I silenced it, needing space to think. The separation agreement sat heavily in my bag, its terms simultaneously generous and insulting. 2 months' salary in exchange for my silence and a legally binding admission of inadequate performance. At home, I poured a glass of wine and opened my laptop. First, I backed up all evidence to a secure cloud account. Then, I began researching my options, making notes on employment law and intellectual property rights. A knock at my door interrupted my research. Through the peephole, I saw David looking worried. I came to check on you, he said when I opened the door. Things happened so fast today. I invited him in, grateful for friendly company. Karen had it all planned: the termination, the partnership announcement, her promotion. It's worse than you know, David said, accepting the wine I offered. After you left, Karen told everyone you'd been stealing her designs for months. She implied you were sharing confidential work with competitors. I nearly dropped my glass. She's accusing me of exactly what she did. She showed emails, Sophia, messages that looked like they came from your account, sending designs to outside firms. That's impossible. I never sent. I paused, a horrible thought forming. When did she say these emails were sent? David thought for a moment. Last month, mostly. She had dates. When I was on vacation in Vancouver, I realized she had access to my computer. She must have used my email account. That makes sense, David agreed. But she presented it convincingly. Even people who like you were starting to doubt. I felt sick. Karen hadn't just stolen my work and fired me. She was systematically destroying my professional reputation, ensuring I couldn't challenge her version of events. "There's something else," David said hesitantly. "A rumor that Archer and Hayes might hire you as a consultant after your non-compete period." "What? Why would they?" Then it hit me. "That's her insurance policy. She's setting it up to look like I sold my designs to them all along." David nodded grimly. "If you take any action against Reynolds, she'll use that narrative to discredit you." After David left, I sat stunned, processing the elaborate trap Karen had constructed. She hadn't just outmaneuvered me, she'd planned multiple moves ahead, anticipating my potential responses and neutralizing them before I could act. My phone rang, an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Ms. Vasquez, James Donovan from Archer and Hayes." Again, I wanted to follow up on our conversation. "Mr. Donovan, I can't discuss anything related to Reynolds or the Portland project. I'm no longer with the firm." "Actually," he said, "that's precisely why I'm calling. Our leadership team was impressed with the concepts Karen attributed to you. We'd like to discuss a potential position." It was confirmation of exactly what David had warned me about, the job offer that would cement Karen's narrative of my betrayal. "I need to consider my options," I replied carefully. "Can I call you next week?" After hanging up, I opened my laptop again, navigating to my email archive. I searched systematically through 6 years of correspondence with Karen, looking for anything that might help my case. In a folder of project communications from 3 years ago, I found it. An email chain I'd completely forgotten. Karen, seeking my input on a struggling project, had explicitly acknowledged my authorship of the coastal restoration design. "Need your magic touch on this one," she'd written. "The kind of innovative approach that made your coastal project such a success." It wasn't just evidence of my work. It was Karen in her own words, confirming I was the true creator of the award-winning design she now claimed as her own. With renewed determination, I spent the weekend building my case. The email I'd discovered was just the beginning. I worked through my archives, constructing a timeline of Karen's appropriation of my work. By Sunday night, I had compiled a detailed dossier, original design files with metadata proving my authorship, email chains showing the evolution of concepts Karen later claimed, performance reviews contradicting her claims of my inadequacy, and testimonials from former clients who had worked directly with me. Monday morning, I prepared to take action. My plan was straightforward. Submit a formal complaint to Reynolds' board of directors, complete with my evidence. Then consult with an attorney about potential legal claims. As I reviewed my documents one final time, an email notification appeared from Harold Reynolds. "Sophia, concerning developments have emerged regarding the Portland project. Need to speak with you immediately. Available to meet this morning." Hope flared briefly. Perhaps Harold had discovered Karen's deception on his own. I responded, agreeing to meet at a coffee shop near the office at 10 a.m. Harold looked haggarded. When he arrived, the confident firm leader replaced by an anxious older man. "Thank you for meeting," he began. "I'll be direct. After our announcement, Portland officials requested additional background on the design concepts. They were impressed with the innovation and wanted to feature the designer's process in their public relations materials." I waited, sensing what was coming. Karen couldn't answer their technical questions, he continued. When pressed, she became evasive. "One official recognized elements similar to your work on the coastal restoration project and asked specifically about your involvement." "And what did Karen say?" I asked. Harold grimaced. "She claimed you had been her mentor, guiding her understanding of sustainable design principles." "Despite everything," I laughed. "Her mentor, she's been taking credit for my work for years." "I'm beginning to see that," Harold admitted. "Portland has paused the project pending clarification of the design authorship. Our partnership with Archer and Hayes is in jeopardy." "Why tell me this?" "I've been terminated, remember? Because Karen insists you have the original files that could resolve this issue. She's claiming you took them when you left." The audacity was breathtaking. Even now, Karen was manipulating the situation, trying to force me to hand over my evidence. "I have the original files," I confirmed, "along with proof that they're my work, not Karen's." Harold leaned forward, Sophia, the firm's reputation is at stake. We need to resolve this quickly and quietly. Reinstate me, I said. Full position. Clear my record and remove Karen from any project involving my designs. That's not possible. Karen is already announced as creative director. Then I'll take my evidence to Portland officials directly and to the architectural press. Harold, PALD. You damaged the entire firm to get back at Karen. I'd ensure proper credit for my work. I corrected. The damage to Reynolds would be collateral to Karen's actions, not mine. As we reached this impasse, my phone buzzed with a news alert. Archer and Hayes announces withdrawal from Portland Waterfront Partnership. I showed Harold the headline. His face fell. It's already unraveling, I said gently. You have one chance to control the narrative before this becomes a public scandal. Harold stared at his coffee, clearly calculating options. What exactly do you want, Sophia? A public acknowledgement of my work. Karen removed from any project involving my designs, and I want to present my Portland concepts to the city officials personally and the termination. I haven't decided yet, but I won't sign the separation agreement. Harold nodded slowly. I'll need to consult with the board, but the Portland situation requires immediate attention. As he left, I received another email from James Donovan at Archer and Hayes, Portland officials requesting clarification on design authorship. Would value your direct input on concepts Karen Mitchell presented. A separate email arrived from a Portland city planner, reaching out directly regarding waterfront revitalization concepts. Questions about sustainable elements in the design. While Harold deliberated with his board, the situation was evolving beyond his or Karen's control. The very clients Karen had impressed with my work were now reaching out to me directly. For the first time since my termination, I smiled. Karen had built her career by taking credit for others' work. Now, her inability to explain the very design she'd claimed would expose her fraud to everyone who mattered. Tuesday morning arrived with a sense of inevitability. Following several conversations with Portland officials and Archer and Hayes executives, I had agreed to a joint meeting at Reynolds' office to clarify the design authorship issue. I dressed carefully, choosing a professional outfit that projected confidence without ostentation. The external hard drive with my evidence went into my bag along with printed copies of key documents. This time I was fully prepared. The conference room fell silent when I entered. Harold sat at the head of the table, flanked by two board members. Representatives from Portland and Archer and Hayes filled one side. Karen sat alone on the other, her usual poise replaced by tense vigilance. Thank you all for coming, Harold began. We're here to address questions regarding the Portland waterfront project designs. Karen immediately took control. I'd like to start by expressing my disappointment that confusion has arisen about my work. While Sophia contributed some initial feedback, the concepts were actually, I interrupted connecting my laptop to the projector. I think it's better if I demonstrate. For the next 20 minutes, I methodically presented my evidence. Original design files with timestamps predating Karen's creation by months. Process documentation showing the evolution of concepts. And most devastatingly, emails where Karen herself acknowledged my authorship of various elements. As you can see, I concluded, these designs represent my work developed independently and without authorization from Reynolds. After Karen took my previous coastal restoration project concepts, without attribution, the Portland officials exchanged glances. These are precisely the technical details we've been requesting. One said pointedly to Karen, details you weren't able to provide. This is absurd. Karen protested, her voice rising. She's manipulated those timestamps. She's trying to sabotage me because she's jealous of my promotion. Actually, said the Archer and Hayes representative, our technical team has verified the metadata. These are unquestionably the original files. Furthermore, added Harold quietly, our IT department has confirmed unauthorized access to Sophia's computer. During her vacation last month, Karen's face drained of color as she realized her carefully constructed narrative was collapsing. Harold, you can't possibly believe. Karen, he interrupted firmly. I think it's time for you to leave. Karen's downfall was swift and comprehensive. Escorted from the building that afternoon, she left behind a trail of fabrications that unraveled with remarkable speed once people started asking the right questions. The board meeting that followed was equally decisive. Harold, fighting to salvage the firm's reputation, announced my reinstatement with a promotion to creative director. The Portland officials, impressed by my original concepts and detailed knowledge, requested I personally lead the waterfront project moving forward. Most satisfying was the company-wide email Harold sent the following day, publicly acknowledging my contributions to Reynolds' award-winning projects and clarifying that the designs Karen had claimed were in fact my work. "I underestimated you," Harold admitted when we met privately. "I should have listened when you tried to tell me what was happening." "Yes, you should have." I agreed, not willing to absolve him too easily. 8 years of my work was attributed to someone else while you looked the other way. His chastened expression confirmed he understood the magnitude of his failure. 1 month later, I stood before the Portland Development Commission, presenting my refined vision for their waterfront. The project was back on track with both Reynolds and Archer, and Hayes collaborating under my direction, a partnership that now acknowledged all contributors properly. Karen, meanwhile, had become a cautionary tale in our industry. After 3 other designers came forward with similar stories of appropriated work, her reputation was in tatters. Last I heard, she had left architecture entirely. As for me, my career entered a new phase. The spotlight I'd avoided for years now felt less intimidating. I established clear protocols for design attribution at Reynolds, mentored younger staff, and finally received the recognition my work deserved. Was it worth it? My daughter asked over dinner, celebrating my first major project launch as creative director. All those years of someone else taking credit, I considered the question, remembering Karen's dismissive words that fateful day. "You're just not cut out for this job." "No," I replied with a smile, "but the vindication at the end, that was definitely worth waiting for."